We all had movies growing up that we enjoyed watching. While others go on to be remembered pretty strongly, like Spy Kids or Shrek, there are other films that kind of fly under the radar. I feel like I see people overuse the whole "nobody remembers this movie" thing though, because I've seen people apply that to movies like Rango or, I don't know, Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like, really? But it is true that sometimes we all watch a movie as a kid, perhaps we owned it on DVD or VHS, and even though it meant a lot to us, when you bring it up to other people, it's like it barely exists. For me, that's a few movies, but one of the few that I actually think held up is 2006's How to Eat Fried Worms, a movie starring future Disney stars like Luke Benward and Adam Hicks, Jesse Eisenberg's sister that apparently exists, and Reverse Flash. For whatever reason, this movie always left an impact on me as a kid, and I still remember it well to this day, so for once I'm actually going to go talk about a film that I find nostalgic. I feel like I haven't done that in a while. So sit back, relax, and grab a pack of gummy worms, because today we will be talking about the underrated family film from 2006, How to Eat Fried Worms.
Is the new kid in school.
That's your lunch, huh? Sweet worms.
Now, if he wants to fit in,
I hate this many worms, Joe. That's a lie. You want to fit.
he'll have to gross them out and face the challenge.
Joe Byers a bully, and you're the first person that ever did anything.
How to Eat Fried Worms. Rated PG. Starts Friday, August 25th.
How to Eat Fried Worms released in theaters on August 25th, 2006. It's directed and written by Bob Dolman. What is interesting is that it's actually based on a book from the 70s of the same name. I haven't read it, but I think I remember seeing it in the library. This also isn't even the first adaptation of the book. In the 80s, there was a Saturday morning cartoon special that I haven't seen. I don't really want to see it either. I'm sure it's peak though. The film starts off with a very nicely animated montage made to represent the family life of our main character, Billy. And when I say nicely animated, this thing looks genuinely great. Like, I'd watch an entire animated series or movie that looked like this. Anyway, the film is mainly about Billy Forrester, who's known for having a weak stomach. On top of that, one of the worst things that could happen to a kid his age is happening to him: moving. From experience, moving is not fun, especially when you're leaving all your friends behind. And dude, this scene where he's in his new house and he opens up this picture all of his friends back home made for him hits so hard. Look at how many friends this dude had, bruh. Hold on, is that Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle? What's good, bro? Next day rolls around as our main character faces another challenge, going to a new school. Man, I wish I was one of those kids that could ride my bike to school. Is that a real thing, or is that only in movies? Some kids immediately point out that Billy is a new kid, so to spook him, they stare him down. The leader of the group is Joe Guire, played by Adam Hicks, who some of y'all, of course, might know as Boz from Pair of Kings. I'm kidding. He was in Jonas, too. There's also Twitch, played by Alexander Gold, who apparently was the original voice of Nemo. That's cool. Respectfully, the other ones weren't really in any project worth mentioning. That is, of course, besides Bradley, who was played by Philip Bolden, who you probably know from Are We There Yet? And I guess it's sequel, if anyone actually remembers that. The stare down seems to work on Billy as he's totally weirded out. But then to make matters worse, the boys decide to press him.
Is that where you're putting your bike?
It's a bike rack.
It's a bike rack.
I don't know how many homeschooled people we got watching this video, but this is actually a lot more accurate than the bullying or teasing you see in other shows and movies. Kids would for real just get on you for the dumbest stuff. I remember one time on the bus, this kid that I didn't like was getting roasted, and then the dude roasting him saw me laughing and he asked me, "What are you laughing at? You probably watch Disney Channel." And I was like 10. Like, yeah, I do. I'm a child. Why is that an issue? Shout out my man Omar though. Billy tries to find his homeroom class and a girl named Erica shows him the way. Unfortunately, due to her being one of the tallest kids in the school, she gets teased a lot, with a lot of the guys calling her Irk. After he puts his lunch bag in his cubby, two of the kids from earlier take it to presumably do something bad to it. And it's not until after the scene where Billy introduces himself to the class where we find out what exactly happened.
Have a delicious lunch.
I was always really confused by this scene because he clearly takes out a sandwich, but then also takes out one of those canisters that contain soup. How much food does this dude need, bruh? Big back. He opens it up only to find that his soup was replaced with worms, and considering his weak stomach, this immediately freaks him and everyone else out. Joe immediately starts teasing him for his apparent love for eating worms, but instead of backing down, Billy actually does what most kids wouldn't, and plays into it like a real one.
Here you go.
I think what I love about this scene the most is Joe's reaction, which is the first sign that he isn't your typical no-brain bully who just picks on kids for no reason. Instead of launching towards Billy or calling him names, he actually looks embarrassed and even scared as the whole school laughs at him. He even looks kind of confused, as presumably no one has ever stood up to him before. This all gets interrupted by the principal, who walks into the cafeteria. To save himself from getting in trouble by both the principal and Joe, he slides the worms onto his lap to hide them. And when the principal, who the kids call Boilerhead, walks away, Joe immediately stares down Billy, something that signifies that what transpired just now in the cafeteria was the beginning of a war. Billy's little brother Woody seems to have had the complete opposite kind of day though, as he immediately became one of the most popular kids in school. This only makes Billy more upset about both what happened at school today and what might potentially happen for the rest of the school year. Reverse Flash checks up on him to see what's going on, and we kind of get some stupid subplot of him trying to fit in his job. I didn't really care about this, so I'm just gonna skip it, but basically is like, yeah, I feel you. The next day at school, Billy gets a note passed to him that simply says Worm Boy, and we see that the entire day they are following him around the school, calling him Worm Boy, with gummy worms in his face. Erica tries to start a conversation with him, but he blows her off, saying that she's just making it worse. So Billy goes outside during recess and just sits on a bench. We're then introduced to Adam Sims, who's kinda sorta part of Joe's crew, and he starts giving Billy some lore regarding him. He says that Joe has this ring that kills you if you get punched with it, but you don't die immediately. You die in the 8th grade, so no one can prove it's him. It's all very scientific-y. I don't expect you guys to understand. Adam says he knows this because he was actually hit with it himself, and he expects to die in a couple of years. Meanwhile, for Billy, the teasing continues even after school. They all follow him on his way home, and this kind of makes him snap. He tells them all that all of this hazing is just a waste of time, because yeah, he eats worms all the time, and they do nothing to him. Sometimes he boils them, and sometimes he fries them. The funny thing is, eating worms shouldn't be that big of a thing. Just ask Phil and Lil. No, but jokes aside, according to people that have actually had them, worms don't really taste like anything other than dirt, since that's what they eat primarily. So as long as you can get by the texture, eating them shouldn't be much of an issue, though obviously you should not make a habit of it. This little exchange leads to Billy and Joe forming a bet involving Billy eating 10 worms without throwing up. The loser of the bet has to come to school with worms in their pants, walking down the hallway past everybody. Joe gets to pick all 10 worms that are to be eaten on the same day, and the bet will officially commence in 2 days. And the two make it official by shaking hands. The next day, one of Joe's quote-unquote friends is in the library looking at worms to learn about them. A crowd forms around him and Billy, containing 2 more members of Joe's posse, and it's clear at this point that those guys specifically don't really have any issues with Billy and are pretty nice to him. They even joke around a bit outside before Joe pulls up on them. Bradley is the official timekeeper of the crew, wearing 4 different watches. He informs Billy that all 10 worms must be eaten by 7 p.m., where he loses. He then adds that Benji will be frying the worms in all sorts of nasty ways, since Billy says that's how he eats them. Later, Billy rides his bike past Erica's house, where she can be seen channeling her inner Green Arrow. Oh wait, she's a girl. Artemis? Emiko Queen, even, if anyone knows who that is?
Say I knew.
Knew what?
About the bet. You can't know you're a girl.
Sounds like valid logic to me. Billy goes on to talk about the bet with her and how he has a really weak stomach, and he only made the bet so he could continue the school year like a regular person. You know, a regular person who eats worms. Later, Billy is informed by his dad that some kids are going to be playing soccer at a field, so he heads over there in an attempt to meet new people. Instead, he finds the same kids from school who are desperately searching for worms for him to eat. Adam Sims brings up the possibility that Billy doesn't actually throw up from the worms due to them potentially just tasting like meat.
Think of the first person who said, I'm gonna eat the chicken. And he ate it, and it was just a chicken.
He's got a point though. Unfortunately though, to test this hypothesis, they force Adam to eat a worm himself, and he actually does it. And yeah, he pukes. This causes Billy to run away in fear that the same will happen to him the next day. That night, he stays up late thinking about everything in front of him. We actually see another animated sequence showcasing the effects of Joe's ring. All of this pressure leads to Billy attempting to run away from home. He packs himself some food from the fridge and heads out, but like most kids, he doesn't actually go anywhere. Billy realizes that he can't spend his whole life running away from stuff. he has to face this one head on. So, he puts his hat back on and walks back into his house, preparing for the big day in front of him. While in the bathroom the next morning, Billy gets informed that he has to watch over his little brother for the day. This of course will put a dampening effect on his plans, but considering he has no choice, he prepares his brother for everything that he might see today. He realizes this is going to be a big task, so he enlists Erica to help him out. We also see a glimpse into Joe's home life, where it's obvious why he acts the way he does. His older brother Nigel, stupid name by the way, no disrespect to you, Mr. Thornberry, heard through the grapevine about some sort of story involving Joe and a worm. He even heard about Billy throwing one in his face.
Said the whole school was laughing and that you were afraid. Were you afraid, Joke, of a little worm?
Yo, this man cannot act. I don't even know why Joe is tripping over him for real. He's about as intimidating as young Sheldon. Hey, speaking of young Sheldon, have y'all checked out that Georgie and Mandy show? I think it's decent, you know, like nothing crazy. Now that's just disrespectful. Later, Benji shows Joe how he plans on cooking the worms, and Billy was there to watch from afar. The boys spot him though and call him out for his little trash team composed of Woody and Erica. Matter of fact, they actually sent Adam over there to make things more even. Yeah, okay, if that's what you want to call even, that's about as even as the hair on top of Trey Young's head. Erica helps Woody use the bathroom as worm number 1 goes into the skillet. Billy is given a fork to pick it up and ew! Worm juice. After hesitating, Billy puts it into his mouth. And okay, before I move on, I want to play the music that was in this scene and ask you guys if it sounds familiar. Not sure how many of you were able to catch it, but for anyone that said, hey, that sounded like something out of Rugrats, you'd be correct. Kinda. The composers of this movie are Mark and Bob Mothersbaugh, who are known for doing the score to Rugrats among other things. And as a Rugrats stan, I had to at least mention this interesting factoid. Anyway, our protagonist Billy is struggling with the worm, and while trying to swallow it, the park sheriff pulls up to tell them to scram. They all take their bikes to another area in the park where Billy does actually swallow the worm. That's 1 down, 9 more to go. Only issue is, they don't have a place to cook them, since the sheriff scared them off. That's when Technomouth, coolest name ever by the way, comes up with an idea.
Adam Sims, his uncle owns the brown toad. My uncle hates me.
Same. Nah, I'm playing. Shout out Uncle Steve. But yeah, they all end up going to the Brown Toad restaurant where Adam attempts to cook the next worm. He gets chased out by his uncle though after almost starting a fire. Adam's attempt at cooking the worm was in the form of an omelette de fromage, which unfortunately is what a customer actually ordered. And unfortunately, that customer just so happens to be Principal Boilerhead. Or at least that's what, the kids call him. He notices the kids and calls them over to begin his little spiel about coming to this restaurant when he was a kid. And the whole time the kids are focused on the half piece of worm that's at the bottom of the omelette de fromage. But they don't call it to his attention, nor does he see it himself. So he eats it and seemingly doesn't notice it. So the kids are in the clear. Most of the kids at least. Before leaving his uncle's restaurant, Adam was able to cook another worm for Billy to eat. 2 of them actually, at the same time. Man, Adam, I thought you were supposed to be on Billy's side. This dude's trying to kill him. Worms number 2 and 3 are officially eaten. 7 more to go. Meanwhile, at Twitch's house, the kids are causing a ruckus in the kitchen as they attempt to cook the next worm.
Your dog is walking sideways, Twitch.
No, kids, arthritis!
I remember that scene making me laugh really hard when I rewatched the movie for this video. This next worm has a little bit, or a lot of bit, of a kick to it, which I feel like should be illegal, but I guess it's not. Billy, in an attempt to not have to walk down to school with worms in his pants, eats it anyway, and they all rush outside to make sure that he swallows it. During this though, Twitch announces that there will be no more cooking in his kitchen, and on top of that, he officially quits Joe's team and moves on to Worm Boys. Joe questions if anyone else wants to leave, and Technomouth changes sides as well. And as you can see, more and more people are starting to have enough of Joe's abusive behavior. It's become increasingly obvious that they were only on his side because 1, there is no one else, and 2, they wanted to avoid being picked on. But as soon as Billy arrived, and some of them were still getting picked on by Joe even though they were on his team, it was a no-brainer to switch sides. Their liberation from Joe has finally arrived, and his name is Billy Forrester.
There you go.
Man, ain't nobody care about this stupid subplot. Team Billy regroups at the store that has one of those arcade Dance Dance Revolution type games. And we get this fun but needed scene of the boys dancing. The reason why I like this scene so much is because it showcases something from childhood that I'm sure a lot of you forgot. How quick and easy it is to make friends when you're a kid. When you get older, things get a little more complicated, but when you're a kid, even if it's just for a temporary amount of time, it's stupid easy to become friends with people. Later, Joe meets Billy's brother Woody and asks him if he can recall any times where Billy's thrown up, and made him start singing like a canary. This dude out here airing out his brother's dirty laundry. See, that's when you gotta hit him with the Lil Wayne. I don't recall.
Thanks, you little midget.
Whoa! You kiss your mother with that mouth? Yeah, good luck trying to host the Oscars now, buddy. It's wraps for you. Anyway, they spin Billy round and around while simultaneously cooking a worm using a magnifying glass. Remember, not throwing up is a part of the bet, so now he has to eat a worm cooked in marshmallows, ketchup, and tuna fish. And guess what? That man downs it like a thug. Suge Knight ain't got nothing on Billy Forrester. Miraculously, he doesn't vomit either, even after doing whatever this is. He falls down while hitting his celly, and Erica goes to check on him. But it appears that our dear protagonist has given into the mob mentality of all the boys making jokes about Erica, because even he gets in on the action by calling her Eric. This is even after she watched his brother for him. That's tough, man. The unfortunate part about what I said earlier regarding it being easy to make friends when you're around this age is that it's also almost as easy to lose them. So even though Erica's been nothing but nice to him this whole time, she runs away after all the hazing. Hate that. Well, in the meantime, they continue to feed Billy more worms, the next one being in the form of a PB&J sandwich. And just after he's beginning to eat, his parents just so happen to drive by after a long day of playing tennis.
You introduce me, Billy?
Don't do it, Billy. He's gonna phase his hand through all their chests. Oh no, he's about to do. Oh, never mind. Anywho, they all wave goodbye as Billy finishes his sandwich. The time is 5 o'clock, which means he has about 2 hours to go home, finish his dinner, and come back to finish the rest of the worms. I think it's got like, what, 4 more? I don't know, I lost track.
3 whole worms to go.
3 whole worms to go, you heard the man. Sadly, he couldn't be eating a worse meal for dinner. When his mom takes Woody in his bedroom on account of him being sleepy, Billy tries to tell his dad that he's been eating worms all day. Sadly, his dad is, Hugh Neutron basically, and he thinks the phrase eating worms means like making mistakes. He's not taking it literally. He tries to sympathize with him, but it's not working because their situations are completely different. He heads to his room after forcing himself to eat his dinner. And not too long after that, Adam and Technomouth tell Billy that Joe wants everybody to meet him at the river because there's an old lady there that sells worms, a fisherman, and they want to sneak in and take some. Twitch, on the other hand, was grounded considering what happened earlier in his kitchen. Billy tells the boys though that he can't just eat any more worms and instead has to quit. But they counter that by saying that if he loses, then they all lose. They make a good point, like unironically, if they lose this, then not only will they always be losers from this point on, but Joe now has the green light to pick on them, like how he does everyone else, considering they switch sides. While thinking about ways to get out of the bet though, a thought crosses his mind involving Erica. So he heads to her house to ask if she has any ideas, but of course, given recent events between the two, she's not very interested in offering advice. Billy rightfully apologizes, but she's still not super forgiving. She does, however, mention that the only reason why Joe picks on everyone is because he knows they're all scared of him. If he's forced to walk down the school hallway with worms in his pants, then that means his reign of terror is over. It'll also make the whole story about his ring mean nothing. Meanwhile, the rest of the boys are at the lake, waiting for this creepy old lady to leave. After she does, Joe tells Plug to go inside to check it all out, and it's obvious that this dude is pretty spooked.
Interesting. They've got dead fish corpses hanging from the ceiling.
What do you mean, dead fish corpses?
Y'all can't scare me like that, bruh. Come on now. Billy, Adam, and Technomouth pull up on the scene to continue with the bet. At this point, it's pretty obvious that Billy isn't fazed by any of this stuff anymore, and I think that is what's contributing to Joe's nervousness. He knows that the chances of him walking down the school with worms in his pants is real, and considering his home life, his dominance over the kids in the school is pretty much the only thing that he has. Some of the boys try to score some worms from the shop as Plug and Donnie talk about Joe.
Sometimes, I wish I wasn't on his team. Like back at the Brown Toad, when he yelled at me, I wanted to quit his team.
And why didn't you?
I'm not brave, I guess.
Benji and Bradley mush the worm with some broccoli, and okay, look, at this point, he's not even eating just the worm. I feel like this shouldn't be allowed. But regardless, Billy downs it, which means there's only 2 worms left. Donnie puts it in the microwave, and as you could probably guess, it explodes. Okay, out of all the ones so far, this might be the grossest. I only say that because, yeah, the worm is whatever, but the microwave is probably crazy dirty. Just then, the lady who owns the shop comes back to chase the kids out of it. But Billy is adamant on making sure he finishes this bet. So while everyone is running, I think it's implied that he scoops up the worm and eats it, but like they don't show it, probably due to it being the grossest one. All the kids manage to escape besides Joe and Billy, who are hiding behind the truck. They think the coast is clear, but then... Man, will y'all stop scaring me like that? Fortunately for the boys, Twitch runs in as a distraction. This helps the two escape with Twitch following behind. Eventually, they stop running, which is why Twitch says that despite him being grounded, he's still part of Billy's team, which is why he's there. And it's a good thing he arrived when he did, because not only did he save Billy, but he'll also be there to witness the very last worm. With 8 minutes left, all the boys look for the very last worm, but to no avail. Everyone, minus Joe at least, is pretty frustrated. Just then, an arrow comes out of nowhere, with one final worm attached to it. And yup, it came from exactly who you'd expect. Billy runs towards it, but Joe beats him to it, grabs the arrow first, and launches it into the water. And this was the very last straw for everyone.
That's not fair. You're a cheater.
With 39 seconds left, Billy dives straight into the water and finds the arrow, which makes everyone around him celebrate, even Erica. Billy puts the worm into his mouth, chews it, and swallows it. He did it with like no time to spare too. This dude hit a buzzer beater. Everyone celebrates Billy's W and the defeat of Joe. And honestly, this scene where they're all jumping for joy after Billy eats a worm is so funny to me because, as Erica puts it, boys are so weird. But I don't know, man. It just makes sense to cheer for this. Even I was happy when I watched this. The celebration is cut short though when Joe's bad acting brother pulls up on his bike. How did he even know where they were? Whatever, this movie slaps, I won't question it. Nigel calls Joe a joke, which is something he's been doing for the whole movie. Good guy Billy though tells Nigel to back off and doubles down on it when Nigel tells him to back off. Eventually, the rest of the kids back up Billy as he backs up Joe. Hey man, these kids are better men than me. You wouldn't catch me doing this. That man made me eat 10 worms. Then this dude Nigel, looking like Mac's brother from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, actually leaves. Anyway, Billy turns to Joe, and I like the scene because once the kids saw how scared Joe was of his brother, I think they all quietly understood why he was acting the way that he was. That doesn't excuse the verbal and sometimes even physical abuse from earlier though, especially to the people that were supposed to be his friends. But I think they all kind of get it. Joe admits defeat to Billy by saying simply that he won. They shake hands, but Billy decides to rip off Joe's ring and give it to Adam Sims, who then later throws it into the river. And I feel like this truly meant that Joe's bullying era was over, and the new one, a more positive one, was just beginning. The next day, Billy wakes up and asks his dad a question about cheating and if wins still count if you do so, even if you weren't aware that you cheated. And we find out why he asked this question in the next scene. You see, it occurred to Billy that since the second worm was eaten by Principal Boilerhead, technically he only ate 9, meaning he didn't really win the bet. And nobody ever noticed it, not even Billy and Joe. And honestly, I didn't notice it either, and I think the writers and director were counting on you not catching it as well. Don't lie, most of y'all probably thought he ate all 10 too. When I rewatched this movie for the video, that was my first time doing so since like 2015 maybe. So needless to say, even though I remember the final scene of the movie, I didn't actually remember what led to it. When the scene came on though, I was like, wow, they really gaslit me into thinking that he ate all 10. The manner in which he did so was so extravagant. It never once occurred to me that he still kind of lost. Thing is though, in a way, they both lost. And if it wasn't for the fact that Billy defended him from his brother, I could totally see Joe making Billy walk down with worms in his pants anyway. But that's not what ended up happening. No, the actual result is way better. They both decided to put worms in their pants, with the entire school watching them. And man, this might actually be one of my favorite movie endings ever. Am I crazy for that? After everything they went through, seeing them put their arms over each other and even dance while going down the hallway is so... Alright, I don't know what this dude's doing. He's tripping. This ain't about you, little bro. Anyway, like I was saying, given everything that the kids went through, it was really cool seeing them reconcile and put the beef aside. The movie ends with Billy and Joe running outside with the entire school behind them, as they take the worms out and toss them in the air, which is questionable, but alright, pop off. Plus, the scene is set to Move Your Feet by Junior Senior, which is one of my favorite songs ever, so that makes the ending even harder. Seeing not just these two, but everyone else involved in the bet celebrating like this makes you suddenly realize that this movie is about a little more than just worms. I think in the long run, it taught kids unity. Billy could have easily let Joe get picked on by his brother. He did not have to speak up for him, but he did anyway because it was the right thing to do, even after all the tormenting. It's funny, this movie never really taught us how to eat fried worms, but it did teach us a thing or two about friendship and forgiveness. And in the end, I say that's slightly more important. One thing this movie does is before the credits, they do a little roll call for everyone in the movie where you see them next to their animated counterpart. And for the most part, a lot of these are accurate, and the fact that Move Your Feet is still playing during the scene makes it even cooler. But like, y'all did Erica wrong, come on now. Got her looking like Philly Phil from Class of 3000, or even better, Gretchen from Recess. What's wrong with y'all, bruh? Alright, y'all made up for it with Woody though. All is forgiven. Last thing we see before the credits is a reassurance message that no worms were harmed in the making of this movie. In case PETA is watching or something. Bruh, stop! Scariest movie I ever seen, bruh. I love How to Eat Fried Worms. Like, I genuinely do. It's one of those movies that encapsulates childhood so well, especially if your childhood was around this time or even a little before it. Aside from the whole eating worms thing, of course, I ain't do that. These kids definitely had more freedom than I did growing up, so it's not exactly one-on-one, but it's still a really nostalgic movie to me. With that being said, I now have to put my nostalgia for it aside and talk about it as a film. And quality-wise, I definitely think it's one of the better theatrical live-action kids or family films from this era, and a lot of it is due to its heart. Whether it's the message, the characters, or even just the tone, there's a lot of positive vibes in this movie. The characters, specifically the kids, are just great though. Some of you might remember my Minutemen review, and if you do, you know that I am a Luke Benward fan. I thought he did a great job in Minutemen, and I thought he did a great job in this movie. He's one of the better child actors that I've seen in movies like this. Billy is a surprisingly confident guy for someone as squeamish as him. From throwing the worm on Joe's face to standing up for himself and the other kids, and eventually even standing up to Joe's brother, he never backed down, and that makes a good character. Joe was a pretty intimidating bully for a kid's movie. Even though they went the whole, oh, well, he's only like this because of his brother route, I still think they did a good job with him. Plus, it is a pretty common reason for bullies becoming bullies, so it's not totally unrealistic or anything. And I like that by the end of the movie, he realized Billy's just a solid dude, so there's no reason to actually hate on him anymore. The two never even verbally apologized. The handshake was all they needed to do. I like that. Then there's Erica, who was great. She didn't really understand why the boys were doing what they were doing, but nonetheless, she came in clutch at the end to help Billy out, even after he made fun of her. Shout out Erica, for real. Some of the characters like Plug, Donnie, Technomouth, Adam, Benji all played their parts in the story well, but there wasn't much development with them since they weren't the focal points of the story. Some of them got more time to shine than others. What's his name with the watches barely had any lines, but he was literally only there to say what the time was, so I can't even really be mad. The story was good, it was executed pretty well, the ending was both exhilarating and joyful. Look, I'm not saying this is a perfect movie, but like, am I crazy for not finding that much wrong with it? It's fun, it's not cringeworthy, at least not to me. It teaches kids how to stand up for themselves and make amends. When scrolling through the reviews, a lot of people are just mad that it wasn't as good as the book. And for that, I have nothing to say, because I haven't read it. But just because something might not be a good adaptation, doesn't mean it can't be a good product. I think the most valid criticism for this movie is that there's little in it for adults to enjoy, and the whole eating worms thing is gross. But I don't know, I obviously know they aren't actually eating worms. I was never personally grossed out. Matter of fact, Adam Hicks recently confirmed on TikTok that they were all just jello.
Is every worm in this movie was made out of jello. There was no worms harmed in the making of this movie.
And sure, yeah, considering the movie is made up of mostly kids, I could see how some adults weren't getting much enjoyment out of it. And although I call it a family movie at times, I could see the argument being made that it's strictly a kid's film. And I guess I'm not the best example to use for an adult, because I'm very much so a kid still at heart, and as long as it's well made, I can still enjoy these kind of movies. But if the whole eating worms thing genuinely bothers you, then I can see why you would enjoy this movie. But this is my channel, not yours. Get out of here. I think How to Eat Fried Worms is a really solid hour-and-a-half time killer for kids or adults with kid hearts. I'm willing to give this movie a 7.8 out of 10. 8 seems just a little too high, but I think this movie slaps. What I would like to know though is your guys' thoughts on the movie. Let me know in the comments below. Also, check out my Patreon for exclusive content, and content before it arrives on the channel. Who knows, you might even be able to get a sneak peek into my next multi-hour retrospective. Anyway, as always, subscribe if you're new, and don't forget to hit that like button. I'm Mr. Nostalgia, and I'm out for now. Peace.